This video is sponsored by my loyal and dedicated Patreon subscribers. Thank you all for your patience and continued support. If you enjoy my fine intermittent content and would like to become a Patreon supporter for $1 or $2 a month, please see the link in the description. And please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Thanks. So this is cool, a Sega Game Gear on my bench. I've never had one of these before. Well, I've never had one on my bench. I've never had one back in the day. In fact, I've never even had a friend that had one until recently. This one's from a colleague at work. This guy, well, it's his brother's more accurately, from the early 90s when he was young. And this is an awesome bit of Game Gear kit, too, I must say. Game Gear battery back with external charger / power supply from Sega. Nice assortment of games, too, all organized in this cool case. Oopsie. Let's take a quick look at some of these games. Columns. Chuck Rock. Oh, nice. Sonic 2. Awesome. We will look at the rest of these games in more detail later on, but first you want to take a look at the Game Gear itself in more detail. I would like to power up the Game Gear with its original Sony power supply, but first I want to examine the power supply to make sure that it's functioning correctly after all these years. You spin me right round, baby. Man, this screw does not want to come out. There we go. And no more singing, I promise. Now, are there any surprises inside? Looks pretty clean. And what's behind the plug cover? Kinda janky plug assembly. I guess that's the way it's done. I'm going to test the transformer now with this GFCI extension cord I have. Little neon light indicates it's on and when it's off. So hopefully I won't chalk myself on mains voltage. Oh man, that is a ridiculously tight fit. Okay, we're finally set up and we can press the reset button and we're now powered up. And if I can find my probes, here we go. I'm going to test the output side. 13.1 volts. The output should be 10 volts DC, so 13 volts seems to be reasonable with no load. Now we'll quickly test the barrel jack as well, make sure that it's getting that voltage. If I can make my hands work. Yep, 13.1 volts, so we're good. I figured I would reflow all these joints while I had everything apart and cleaned up the PCB a bit so it does look a little bit better. And I think we're good to power up the Game Gear. And the power supply is reassembled and plugged in. We're going to throw in the TAS cartridge as our test cartridge. Power on. We have a power light. And nothing else. Oh, we have sound. But no display that I can see. Time to open her up, I guess. I do have Sega and Nintendo security screwdriver bits somewhere, but I have misplaced them. Fortunately, the Game Gear has only one security screw in the cartridge slot, and I managed to remove that with a regular hex bit. And last but not least, screw number 7. And finally, we can take a peek under the hood. That is assuming I can figure out how to open this up. Ah, there we go. So what have we got here? This is a later design cost-reduced revision of the main board with a single ASIC. Initial revisions of the board had 2 ASICs. I really do need to get this top cover off in order to get a closer look at everything. It looks like there's a few plugs to unplug, and then the whole thing should come apart. Let's start with this plug to the audio out board. There, that was easy. And the little board over here is the power board. There, that came off easy too. Now, I missed one on the audio board. This one does not want to come out, and I do not want to yank on the wire, so I'm going to need needle nose pliers. Okay, done. And seeing as I've never done this before, I think I want to deal with these 2 smaller PCBs first. Things do seem to be a little bit simpler on these smaller boards. In this corner, we have the power board responsible for generating all the different voltages required. And over in this corner, we have the sound board responsible for audio output. And it seems this little PCB has some SMD caps, including a couple hiding under that plate. So let's get rid of this metal plate so that we can have a closer look at this little soundboard. 4 small screws removed and the metal plate just lifts out. That was pretty easy. And here's a better look at our SMD caps. We might as well remove this PCB while we're here. Again, that was pretty simple. So far, so good. Now let's try our luck and remove the power board. Okay, the screws are removed. How do you get this board out of here? Oh. This plastic shield thingy is holding it down. And how does one remove the plastic shield thingy? Oh, duh. It's just stuck down with adhesive. But can it be pried off in one piece? After all that, where did it go? And more importantly, why is this still not coming out? Out, damn board. Oh, I see. Finesse is required. Done. This is the single ASIC USA VA1 mainboard intended for the North American market. From the black stamp on the lower left, we can see that this board was assembled in May 1994, 28 years ago. As any online reference or retro console repair guru will definitely tell you,
Game Gear issues are typically caused by failed electrolytic capacitors and damage associated with that.
and that's exactly what we're going to do in this video to repair and future-proof this Sega Game Gear. We're going to replace the capacitors on the power board, the sound board, and of course, the main board. And I think I'll start with the power board first because it looks like the most simple one to tackle. having only 3 through-hole capacitors. I'm going to add a wee bit of flux to the leads at the underside of the PCB, and then heat those to remove the caps. Flux is applied, and I'm going to use the pinch and pull method while I heat up the leads with the iron. First one removed, but it did require a little extra pulling, probably because of this schmutz on the bottom. Let's try number 2 now. And of course there's the added difficulty of trying to do this while reaching around a camera. And number 2 is out. And finally on to the last one. This is a larger cap. I will heat and gently pull on one leg at a time. There, done. And what is this stuff? Oh, it's glue. They glued the caps down to the board. One of the holes here has some solder still in it, so we'll use some solder wick and clear that hole. There we go. Looks good. Nope, found another hole that needs wicking. There, now we're good. Now it's time for a quick cleanup, and we can install the new caps. Looking nice. Okay, let's talk capacitors. I know there are a lot of retro component supply companies out there, and you can get your capacitors from them, which is fine. However, for me, I actually enjoy sifting through long lists of capacitors on sites like DigiKey looking for the perfect replacement cap. I can not only choose a reputable brand, but I can also select the correct height, width, lead spacing, and voltage I'm looking for. And a little MFR pro tip, always include notes for each product that you're adding to the cart on sites like DigiKey. This will help you keep track of what the product's for and where it goes. In this case, the electrolytic cap at position C11 of the Game Gear power board. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. The black caps are the ones I just removed from the power board. The red caps are the new replacements. I was able to match the exact dimensions and lead spacings, but as the new caps are modern day variants, in several instances I was able to select capacitors having a higher voltage tolerance while maintaining the exact same dimensions as the original. This of course is a bonus for us, especially when future-proofing old retro electronics like this. Okay, enough jibber jab. Let's get these funky new red caps installed. Of course, always being mindful that the polarity is correct. 1, 2, and 3. All right, you guys, stay put. Stay. Good cap. Okay, I'm just going to use a little dab of solder to keep these in place. There. Oh, that's ugly. Okay, let's get some proper amounts of solder on here and push these caps flush to the board. Ah, yes, that's a lot better. Everything is flush to the board, and the only thing left to do is trim the leads. Nice. A little bit of a cleanup, and we're ready to move on. Right, the board's all cleaned up, but I do want to double check this capacitor, the 22 microfarad one at C5. The lead spacing is only 2 millimeters for this cap, so I'm going to use my trusty cheapo 40 times magnifier to make sure that I didn't short the leads with some overzealous soldering. And there it is. Looks good. Nothing's bridged. We're good to move on. And of course, we are moving on to recap the soundboard. This board presents a different challenge because this time we have to replace SMD electrolytic caps, not through-hole caps. Interestingly enough, I don't see that any of these capacitors have leaked, which is a common problem with this type of capacitor of that era. There's no evidence whatsoever that there's any leakage. But anyway, they're coming off. I'm going to start with applying a little bit of solder to each of the pads. Probably with the wrong tip. And now as I stare at this, I'm thinking I'm going to need something to hold the PCB in place while I heat up each pad and use tweezers to pull up on the cap. Introducing the green vise of knowledge that will hold the PCB in place while I heat up the pad and tug on the cap. Okay, what are the odds these are glued down too? And it turns out these caps are not glued down, and I found this out because I have now switched to the clip method of removal. Using a pair of flush cutter snips, I will snip the can halfway down, which leaves just a little bit of the can that can be pulled off. And then the plastic base should just lift off from the two little legs that are still soldered to the board. I have to say that these surface mount electrolytic caps look pretty healthy, juicy inside. None of the electrolyte has leaked at all. Yeah, lots of electrolyte still in this one. Oh man, lots of juicy goodness in this one. Oh boy, let the comments begin. And that right there, boys and girls, is why the snip method is probably not the best method to use. I just pulled a pad. Damn it. Well, let's get in here with the iron now and see what kind of damage we've really done. Did I mention this was not easy to do, reaching around the other side of a camera? Well, I guess the good news is we didn't lose the whole pad. We lost the least important part of the pad. The main part is still there, and we should be able to get a cap reattached to that, no problem. Now let's just clean up these other pads and make sure we didn't do any damage there. I keep saying we because you and I are in this together. Thankfully, the residual legs are coming off cleanly and the pads underneath are in great shape. Here's an aerial view of the pad I damaged. Again, there's still enough there that we should be able to reattach a capacitor without any issue. And this is the snip method carnage pile. Again, these capacitors are really juicy inside, and they probably didn't need to come off, but I guess in the long run it's best that they did, and that we were replacing them with brand new modern ones. I'm going to add a touch more of fresh solder to these pads, and then we can continue with the SMD cap installation. Of course, paying special attention to the damaged pad. There we go. And now this board is prepped for its new SMD caps. And these are the new caps, fresh from DigiKey. The soundboard requires these 5 surface mount electrolytic capacitors that we will install now, hopefully without incident. I'm going to start with our damaged pad cap. And while holding this little cap with the tweezers and not touching the top of it with my iron, I will tack it down. There, yeah, perfect. Okay, let's try this again. So this time I have the board sort of tacked to my bench with some blue tack, and again reaching around the camp. Oh man, always being mindful of the polarity. Stripe lines up with stripe. Okay, here we go. Oh, look at that, didn't tip over. Let's have a closer peek. Yeah, well, it's on there, but it's not level, of course, yet. Let's tack it down a little bit better and then work on the other side. There, that seems to be on there pretty good. And while pressing down, I will heat up the pad on this side and pop. Yeah, there we go. Now it's nice and flush against the board. Phew. Let's try the same method with this one. You know, I switched to a wider chisel tip on the iron, and I don't know if that was a good idea. I feel like I'm going to melt something else because this board is kind of crammed with stuff. Anyway, that tacked on pretty good. And now I will push down on the top like before, push that side down, and Bob's your uncle. And this is what I mean about damaging other things with this wider tip. I'm totally afraid I'm going to melt that connector trying to squeeze this hot iron in there. Okay, I switched back to a narrower tip and completed the soldering off camera, but it is done. Everything's good. I am happy. And we've reached the point where the 2 smaller boards are finally recapped, and we are moving on to the large main board with all of its caps that need to be replaced. However, I think I'm going to call it here for what is part 1 of this video. Stay tuned for part 2, where we recap the main board of this Sega Game Gear. And once again, thanks to my Patreon supporters, whose names are appearing on the screen right now. And a very special thanks to Simon Locke for his contributions in assisting me with this Game Gear repair, and for contributing to this video with his smooth, soft voiceover skills. Be sure to follow Simon on Twitter, and also check out his website. Links are in the description. If you're in the UK and you need your retro gaming console repaired, Simon's your guy, so be sure to reach out to him. Thanks for watching, thanks for your time, and we'll see you again soon for part 2.